All right. Well, let's get started. I'd like to thank you all for signing on this afternoon. It seems like every July something comes up that needs to be addressed, but certainly this is very important. Our Model Safe Schools checklist. And so, with no further ado, we'll turn it over to Dr. Moore and she can start her presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Walters. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I can. Yes.
Okay, great. So the purpose of our visit today, or our meeting today, is to get approval for the 2022 Model Safe School Checklist. During the last board meeting, we distributed the 2021 checklist for your review. Since that time, we have given the checklist to district safety coordinators and asked that they provide input regarding possible changes. And so what you were given, I think, on Friday is the proposed 2022 checklist. So I would want to go through the proposed changes. I won't go through what I'm considering to be the insignificant changes, like changing, adding an S on a word. I think we would spend the time going through the substantive changes if that's okay with everyone.
Yes.
The document is, the checklist is numbered, so we're going to start there. And so the first, and this is not a substantive change, but I do think it's worthy of noting that the checklist is due to the Department of Education on September the 1st of every year. And so we typically put in the dates when the checklist has been updated. So that's why it says September 21st, 2021 and August 31st, 2022, because what we're trying to accomplish is to make sure that the changes have been updated in the appropriate year. Okay. So then let's move to page where the substantive changes are. I think the most substantive changes thus far is on page 4. And we have crossed through those changes that will be deleted as proposed to be deleted from the checklist and underlying additions to the checklist. So the most substantive change requested, and as information, we got input from 3 of our districts, from Charleston, Horry, and Georgetown. And so the request was to move on item 12 on page 4. The request is to delete the requirement for districts to indicate whether or not there are processes in place to conduct the following assessments. So there is a request to delete the capacity assessment, and there is a request to delete the culture and climate assessment. So that is the first substantive change that will require your approval. Continuing on page 6, question 14, we added the fire code and the state statute that requires fire drills, weather drills, and active shooter drills. There was some confusion about whether or not the fire drill was monthly or in accordance with S709, was it supposed to be twice a year? But we indicated through the fire code that fire drills are to occur monthly, and then the weather and active shooter drills are to occur twice during the academic year. We struck through the remaining drills on that line item and indicated a new question. And the new question is, which of the following drills were conducted in your schools in your district during 21-22? The purpose of that is that some districts felt that the lockdowns, bomb threats, chemical release, riot gang drills were required by law, statute, code, and they are not. And so but we do believe it is important to get that information, because we do believe districts should conduct lockdown drills, bomb threat drills, and things like that. And so to clear up, to ensure that districts did not believe that these were required drills, we implemented a second question. We wanted to know how many schools, one or more schools, all schools, or no schools. As a point of information, for example, under lockdown, it says one or more schools. If that box is checked, there will be an additional drop down to ask how many schools, because some districts have 20, 30 plus 40 schools. So we wanted to get a little bit more information there. On page 7, question 18 is a new question. It asks, how are the district's discipline policies and procedures communicated? We know districts are required to have policies and procedures related to discipline as is indicated. And then in question 17, we ask, to whom are these policies and procedures distributed? Question 18 asks, what's the mechanism by which those policies and procedures are distributed? And we have not had that question before. So we are proposing to add that question. We're going to skip over a couple of pages. The next substantive change is just for your information, on page 11. Proviso 174 requires all schools to have threat assessment teams. We provide a definition of threat assessment. It's the team that's responsible for identifying and assessing persons whose behavior could pose a risk to themselves or others in school. We received feedback that all districts don't call them threat assessment teams, so we just gave some other possible names of those teams just to ensure that everyone is clear as to, if you have a crisis management team and that team is responsible for assessing student behavior, then that is an appropriate, then you are abiding by law. So you do have a threat assessment team, just called a different name. On page 12, the additional question is, and as information, we are required, the department is required to work with SLED to provide threat assessment training. In 2019-2020, we developed the South Carolina School-Based Behavior Threat Assessment and Management Guide with stakeholders from various organizations, including SLED, including districts. And so that guide was developed. We provide training on that guide annually. The department facilitates and coordinates that training annually. So we just want to make sure that districts are taking advantage of that training. More specifically, that those individuals who are identified as members of their threat assessment team, that those individuals too are receiving that training. As information, we're having that training today. So after I leave this meeting, I'll go back and continue with that training. And then the question 34 is new, because what we want to do in being a resource to districts and schools is to determine what additional training and resources do districts say they need that perhaps the Department of Education can coordinate or facilitate. So we're proposing approval for adding those two questions. And then finally, on page 15, we're proposing the deletion of question 46. Have any processes related to school safety plans or discipline policies changed over the last year? Because that question is answered by the submission of the checklist, then we're proposing that that question be deleted. And then the COVID-19 question, we're also proposing to be deleted. We wanted that information right after the 2020 school year, when schools had to change and most of them were going virtually. We wanted to know the impact on their policies and procedures as it relates to drills in response to COVID. We've gotten that information schools are pretty much operating normally now in terms of being face-to-face. So we don't believe that that question is needed at this point in time. And I think those, yes, those are the most substantive changes, or all of the substantive changes that we are presenting for your approval. Are there any questions?
Questions for Dr. Moore? Let me mention to the board members as well that I went through this question by question with Deputy Superintendent Virgie Chambers too, because some of the county level safety directors have reached out to me, and what's being proposed today addresses all of the concerns that have been brought forward. So I'm happy with it.
That's good enough for me. So moved.
Have a motion? Do we have a
I'll
second?
I'll second.
Have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Well, thank you very much. That was the only bit of business we had for today that I'm aware of. But as we said, it's an important piece of business. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do it. And enjoy your summer. And we'll see you in Columbia in August.
See you in
Yeah,
August.
thank you
Thank you
for-
very
We stand
much,
adjourned.
y'all.
Y'all have
Thank
a
you.
good week.
Take care.
Bye.
See you next month.